The Somali pirates who ransacked Minnesota remind us that there are large parts of the world where bribery, corruption, and lawlessness are the norm, not the exception. Importing these cultures through unrestricted immigration and open borders brings those problems right here to the USA. Murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
So let's start breaking down the State of the Union and why I believe Democrats like Ilhan Omar walked right into President Trump's trap tonight on major political issues. Because as I said going in, a key political goal of Trump's needed to be to remind the American people of who the Democrats actually are. Which is to say, despite all of the anti-Trump propaganda over the past couple of months, there is no reason why an issue like immigration or even the economy should be political strengths for Democrats. No, they should be political vulnerabilities. But in order to do that, you have to regain control of the narrative, which is what this speech was all about. It needed to be the time to remind everyone that on immigration, whatever you even think about ICE, you might be a moderate American who says the tactics are too aggressive or something, but please don't forget that the Democrats are the party of open borders carnage and third world crime. You might think Trump is quote unquote going too far if that's your opinion, but the Democrats are genuinely mentally deranged and insane. That's the message that the American people sent in 2024. Please put it back in your memory. On the economy, by the way, you may think that the economic recovery is happening too slow, but please don't forget that the Democrats are the party of literally raising taxes, Biden inflation, and unaffordability. So stop allowing these people to virtue signal or go on the offensive about issues that they are fundamentally failed on. And that is exactly what Trump was very on the nose saying tonight at multiple moments in his speech. And we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about how he directly calls out Democrats in the room and says, you are full of crap as it pertains to immigration, affordability. Shut up. You have no right to speak about it. Let's go through the record. But secondly, as it pertained to the Democrat antics that I was sure we're going to watch in some way, shape, or form, right? Some politicians choosing to boycott, walking out, throwing up signs, or shouting in the middle of the speech. That was also a moment for me where I was genuinely hoping, yes, I hope the American people see all of that and again take notes of just how off-putting and not normal people the Democrat Party actually is, right? Because again, the whole media narrative had just been Trump this, Trump that, Trump is so bad, he's terrible. But please remember, these are the opposition leading that charge, okay? The election is a choice between two different parties. So please remember, again, you might not be the biggest fan of Trump, but the other party is genuinely mentally insane. And that is, of course, what we likewise saw tonight in the behavior of people like Ilhan Omar and Al Green during the speech. So that said, let's get into all of this, guys. I kind of want to break down the different political angles on the State of the Union, especially as they pertain, again, to those two key political issues of the day, economy and immigration, and why this was overall a political win for Trump because it put Democrats on the back foot and they're going to struggle to respond. So let's get into all of it, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate the support, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, very early on into the speech, can someone get me a timestamp on this? I had to have been about 2 to 3 minutes in, right? We, of course, have Representative Al Green just being such a wonderful ambassador of the Democrat Party. You know, he definitely doesn't look like a Neanderthal. He's definitely not a geriatric fossil who just comes off as some crazy old man waving his cane around like an idiot. He definitely didn't embarrass himself enough last year. Of course, in record time, once again, for the second year in a row, everyone clap it up for the streak. We're getting a dynasty here of him getting himself kicked out very early on into the State of the Union. Check it out for yourself.
And we will never go back to where we were just a very short time ago. We're not going back. Today our border is secure.
Here you see a sign, by the way, that apparently reads, "Black people aren't apes." And it always cracks me up every time Al Green does this, where he clearly seems to think he's some type of civil rights leader, right? He's this Rosa Parks, MLK-esque figure who's being really brave and doing an act of civil disobedience, but in reality, he doesn't understand. It's not the 1960s anymore. He just looks like this crazy old man. But again, reiterating the theme that we're trying to paint here of Democrats, right? This was our goal tonight, to show, hey, remember everyone? The Democrat Party is literally insane. They are crazy people. They are extremely off-putting to the sensibilities of normal Americans. Thank you so much, Al Green. One more year here for having your crazy meltdown and throwing your cane in the air one more time. You can always count on him to disgrace this party. Worth noting and remembering, by the way, as we covered, this year, Hakeem Jeffries was basically trying to get the Democrat caucus sitting in the event to behave. That's why he allowed so many members to boycott and not show up. He was basically saying, hey, you know, we looked like fools last year and many times in the past. Let's avoid the antics. And yet still, we managed to get Al Green, right? Just acting like Al Green. We likewise got Democrats still sending a very clear message in terms of what they would and would not clap for, which we'll get to in a second. But I, of course, also want to show you the moment where President Trump began speaking about the Somali fraud issue and making a very pertinent point about how both mass migration and the issue of Democrat crime combined are plundering this nation of its own wealth. And Ilhan Omar begins to start hysterically screaming. She is visibly on the verge of tears, and it's just overall not a very good look. But take a look.
But when it comes to the corruption that is plundering, it's plundering America. There's been no more stunning example than Minnesota, where members of the Somali community have pillaged an estimated $19 billion from the American taxpayer. Oh, we have all the information. And in actuality, the number is much higher than that. And California, Massachusetts, Maine, and many other states are even worse. This is the kind of corruption that shreds the fabric of a nation, and we are working on it like you wouldn't believe. So tonight, although started 4 months ago, I am officially announcing the war on fraud to be led by our great Vice President J.D. Vance. Get it done. And if we're able to find enough of that fraud, we will actually have a balanced budget overnight. It'll go very quickly. That's the kind of money you're talking about. We'll balance our budget. The Somali pirates who ransacked Minnesota remind us that there are large parts of the world where bribery, corruption, and lawlessness are the norm, not the exception. Importing these cultures through unrestricted immigration and open borders brings those problems right here to the USA. And it is the American people who pay the price in higher medical bills, car insurance rates, rent, taxes, and perhaps most importantly, crime. We will take care of this problem. We're going to take care of this problem. We are not playing games. Officials who block the removal of criminal aliens, in many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, so Ilhan Omar is clearly offended personally by this whole part of the speech. I really wonder why that could be. Could it be because she herself is a third worldist? Could it be, even when you delve into her personally, she is not that far removed from the culture of bribery, corruption, and mass fraud that is plaguing many members of the Somali community over in Minnesota? Or is she just overall insulted by the idea that, yes, when you import the third world, you become the third world? And yes, importing cultures of, as Trump mentions, piracy, bribery, and corruption brings absolutely no benefit to the people of the United States. As a matter of fact, it only does them economic and just real world harm. So why is Ilhan so upset about that? Of course, because that's everything describing Ilhan Omar, right? So we get that entire point. But then, of course, secondly, you gotta love the part where she just has tears in her eyes. She's like a visibly enraged, crazy person, just screaming. Ah! It's like perfect archetype, frankly, of, I guess, liberal women and the stereotype about them. So, just a great moment that I really enjoyed. I was like, yeah, Ilhan, keep screaming over the speech. I'm sure that's going to look very good for you. And again, Democrats, what happened to being quiet? They were doing a decent job of that, and then Ilhan Omar, as a low impulse control individual, just completely lost control of herself, and there you have it. But it doesn't stop there, okay? I personally greatly enjoyed the part where President Trump, for example, called out Democrats directly to them, right? On this issue of affordability and the economy itself, bringing up first and foremost that anything right now having to deal with lingering inflation, which, by the way, is actually going down, and we talk about those numbers all the time, but okay, fine, is directly, yes, a byproduct of the Biden administration, which is the very reason why the literal party of inflation in the 2020s decade has no place to talk. And so Trump definitely made a point to call this out, but even went further, pointing out that, hey, the party claiming now to be the party of affordability is raising taxes across America. And let's not forget their big political project of 2025 was literally voting against the Trump tax cuts that would have kept, first of all, lower tax brackets for all Americans. But then secondly, let's talk about things like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. Democrats opposed what was largely a working class tax cut because guess what? In Big Beautiful Bill, right? The rich Americans are not really making their money off of tips or overtime or Social Security. And now these people that's their affordability agenda, apparently, right? Raising taxes. It's so ridiculous. Trump made a point to call that out to, the entirety of the American population, but even makes a great point on the one part of our consumer economy that actually is still dealing with bad inflation, which is, of course, healthcare, and further goes on to note that's also because of something called Obamacare. So to make a long story short, you're dealing with a lot of affordability and economic arguments as of late. Trump makes the very point I said he had to make. Remind the American people of who the Democrats actually are. They're not just crazed, screaming people like Ilhan Omar. Their actual political ideas suck as well, and here's the reason why.
Same people in this chamber who voted for those disasters suddenly used the word affordability, a word they just used it. Somebody gave it to them, knowing full well that they caused and created the increased prices that all of our citizens had to endure. You caused that problem. You caused that problem. They knew their statements were a lie. They knew it. They knew their statements were a dirty, rotten lie. Their policies created the high prices. Our policies are rapidly ending them. We are doing really well. Those prices are plummeting downward. Democrats, every single one of them, voted against these really important and very necessary massive tax cuts. They wanted large-scale tax increases to hurt the people instead. But we held strong, and with the great, big, beautiful bill, we gave you no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for our great seniors. And we also made interest on auto loans tax deductible the first time, but only if the car is made in America. I'm also confronting one of the biggest ripoffs of our times, the crushing cost of health care caused by you. Since the passage of the Unaffordable Care Act, sometimes referred to as Obamacare, big insurance companies have gotten rich.
Right? As I've been saying, the whole point here was to remind the American people of who Democrats actually are. And Trump spares no punches. He makes a point to say directly, this is who the Democrats are. In case you were thinking I was being subtle, you couldn't figure out the meaning. No, I'm directly saying yes. The Democrats, as one example, are campaigning on affordability while making their entire agenda raising taxes. They would have let the Trump tax cuts expire. By the way, it's worth noting, not shown in that clip, but at one moment before that, they stood up and cheered. They stood up and clapped over the fact that they refused to vote for the big, beautiful bill, which Trump then proceeded to say, hey, that's no tax on tips. That's no tax on Social Security. That's what Democrats oppose because, of course, their affordability argument is a complete brain dead joke, but you gotta make that message, you gotta make that pitch, and that's, of course, exactly what was done. And on this point of reminding everyone that Democrats are crazy and insane, I also found it very telling which things Democrats refuse to stand up for and clap for and cheer for. Because this year they tried to say, okay, maybe war veterans and stuff, we shouldn't be boycotting them this time. Let's try to act somewhat mature, even though multiple Democrats still did not stand for the U.S. men's hockey team, for instance. But here is a full list of what Democrats refused to stand for during the State of the Union. And it really did tell the message of, again, reminding the American people, oh, shoot, that Democrat Party is far left, radical, dangerous, and insane. Sure, maybe I don't agree with everything Trump does, speaking from a third-person perspective of an American, but man, those people are crazy. Well, here's, for instance, what they opposed tonight. Putting American citizens over illegal aliens, we'll talk about that in a second, but voter ID laws, widely supported by the vast majority of Americans. The murder rate being at the lowest since 1900. Yes, Democrats basically said that low crime and low murder is a bad thing. Keeping violent criminals locked up, of course, because that is the actual political agenda of Democrats. Freeing violent criminals. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's not hyperbole. They actually do this stuff, right? Protecting parental rights from being socially transitioned at the age of, say, 14, right? Transing your kid as a teenager. Nope, Democrats think that should actually be allowed to be done without parental consent, right? The state should be allowed to force your child without your consent to be transgender. And that's, of course, something that they refuse to clap for here tonight. Stopping fraud, angel families of people who were murdered by illegal aliens, price transparency on prescription drugs, taking out drug cartels, no tax on tips, overtime and Social Security, the most secure border in history. And yes, the contrast could not be clearer. The Trump White House seems to get the same message I was trying to push, right? Democrats are crazy. President Trump and Republicans are for common sense, and that was the message tonight. But I arguably found the best moment of all, perhaps the defining moment of this speech, is when Trump, after noticing throughout the night how many Democrats refused to stand for anything, asks a very basic question. Hey, stand up if you believe that the first duty of the U.S. government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. And notably, almost nobody from the Democrat Party stands up in response to that, basically saying, yes, they don't believe the first duty of the U.S. government is to protect American citizens. Yes, they actually do believe in putting illegal aliens over American citizens, the very people who vote and pay taxes. And again, I say that's ground zero for everything the Democrat Party stands for. And I hope all of America was paying attention. I hope all of America took that to heart. These people are anti-American, insane radicals.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
And there you have it. If you ask me to sum up the State of the Union in one clip, one message, it's that question right there. It's that moment. Notice how even allegedly moderate Democrats, like Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, refuse to stand, refuse to acknowledge it, because even that wing of the party is on the side of illegal aliens over American citizens. And sure, normal American, moderate American, feel free to have your own thoughts and opinions on ICE. You don't have to agree with everything. But please remember and understand that these are the people who are leading the protests. As President Trump noted, by the way, the very reason why ICE is a necessary organization, why their current operations are needed in this country, is because of the fact that these insane radicals that you just saw on your screen open the borders to tens of millions of people, which, yes, do not just include happy kumbaya hippies, but rather violent criminals, drug dealers, terrorists, murderers, some of which, by the way, have murdered multiple American citizens, including the angel moms tonight in that crowd that Democrats also likewise refuse to clap for and refuse to acknowledge. This is who they are. They are literally an open borders third world death cult who has no grounds to lecture anyone on killing Americans because of a police involved situation. They are full of crap. And basically, the message they're running on in 2026 is hoping you don't remember who they are, right? That's why Hakeem Jeffries said, hey, don't act ridiculous this year. It's midterm year. Let's try to be more normal. Let's try to be more relatable. And yet the thin mask very often comes out so easily. And there you have it. So again, to summarize here, that's why I say Democrats walked right into Trump's trap tonight, because the mission for Democrats is, hey, maybe we do have some political momentum. I'll acknowledge that. Okay, you guys probably, with the whole ICE situation, have your voter base mobilized. The one mission for you was going to be, don't look crazy and off-putting in the eyes of normal Americans. And to make a long story short, largely thanks to Trump's sort of handiwork on it, but also thanks to just your insane nature, you completely failed in that mission. And here we are. Now we're on the front foot again. Now Democrats once again have to defend their absolutely insane, unwinnable positions. And I love to see it, because these insufferable people just saw 3 months of propaganda go overnight. So there you have it, guys. That said, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.